The year is 1956. After a horrible attempt on the lives of the glorious 5 leaders of Guldregel by the deranged murderer Lys, the oligarchy's grip on the state tightens. More power goes directly to the 5 and away from the institutions set up by them to help run the state. Local autonomy decreases further and it becomes much harder to do anything. We follow Nista, a woman who before this event was blissfully unaware of any kind of resistance against the 5 and personally on their side. She sees the 5 as a good part of society, benevolent rulers who only want the best for Guldregel. But when the assassination attempt happens and restrictions tighten, she starts to see the truth. Over the course of her story, we see Nista's belief in the 5 begin to falter and eventually shatter. She becomes a member of the revolution against them and works to do what Lys, now the poster child of an enemy to the state, couldn't. Riots occur, protests take place, strikes begin, all with violent responses from the 5, only strengthening the revolution's support and Nista's new beliefs. Welcome to the End of Guldregel. The story of the End of Guldregel is told from Nista's own perspective, showing how she joins the revolution and works during the bloody Regelian civil war that ensues, and following her own emotions and interactions. But with this video, I want to show something further out, the actual war. Today, I want to show you the map and timeline of the bloodiest war in Fantasy history. I will cover the ever-changing map of the Regelian civil war across the whole nation, and the complicated situation in the center of its capital, Cairn. We start immediately after the attempted assassination of the 5. Fearing another attempt on their lives, the 5 put their restrictions into place. Autonomy is lost, people are shifted, and everything becomes stricter. Unfortunately for them, though, the oligarchs were wrong. The only reaction to these new policies is a negative one. Many resistance movements in the nation gain strength as people flood to them looking for something better than what's going on. Nothing starts yet, but tensions are high. After a few months of the new laws, everything finally explodes. A particularly bad strike in the capital led to the 5 bringing in the military to violently put down the demonstration. Hundreds of men are killed across 3 different resistance movements, and everyone collectively understands it is time. The revolution, a movement that Lys and later Nista were in, whose goal was to create a democratic Guldregel with elected leaders rather than oligarchs, started first. The capital section of the movement was centered around the northeast housing sector of Cairn, and they quickly occupied it while other branches of the revolution broke out across the country. The main military of Guldregel had just left Cairn and was slow to react due to its disorganization, so the revolution, especially in places away from the capital, made decent progress. The next group to move was the Socialistique, a smaller group with the goal of a communist state with workers' freedoms and a society based on monetary equality. They were mostly based in Farine, a city far away from the capital, and were able to quickly take the city from the few soldiers garrisoning it, especially with about half of the garrison being a member of the group. Lastly, there was Machtfold, a very small group with only about 200 people, mostly centered in the largest city near to the capital, Afstand, and were just as bad as the 5. They still wanted an authoritarian state, just led by one of them and not the 5. Machtfold was small, but they were the most heavily armed resistance group and were able to take over Afstand soon after the Socialistique conquered Farine. The 5 thought things couldn't get worse for their rule over the country, but to their dismay, it did. Many of the regions that were allowed a little more autonomy than other places in the nation before the crackdown work to break away that autonomy rebelled as well. First came the larger ones with more population to rebel with, then the small cities came after. After that were the Regelian puppets. First, the land most recently added to the nation, Havarit. Only 20 years earlier, Guldregel had invaded Havarit, forcing them to give up half their land and submit to their Regelian overlords. There was still a lot of unrest there, and locals were quickly able to set up a provisional government after taking back a lot of their land. A sizable portion of the military was still set up in Havarit to make sure no rebellions took place there, so the Regelian army held out for a while, but the majority of Havaritian territory was reclaimed. After Havarit successfully rebelled, it made everyone more and more sure that Guldregel would fall. The other puppet government of the nation, Andit, also broke free from them and had similar successes. Guldregel was falling apart, and the other world governments needed to decide what to do. Help them or join the fight to tear them apart. While Guldregel was a generally disliked country across the world due to their policies of authoritarianism and harsh rule, they still had some allies. Laker, Guldregel's larger southern neighbor, was one of them. They moved in to occupy Indetan territory and push through Guldregel to the principalities that broke away. In addition, they were able to pressure Usurpator, the nation bordering both Laker and Guldregel, to not join to steal land from Guldregel, for now. Unfortunately for them, they had no other allies and no one else was coming to help them. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Folket, a nation near Havrit, agreed to help the nation gain its sovereignty and its land back in exchange for the land around Kist, a city on the coast of the land Guldregel took from Havrit. They quickly moved their sizable military in to help out the Havratian rebels and managed to occupy Kist. Vindel, a peninsular nation bordering Folket, recognized the situation Guldregel was in and knew they could make some gains off them, and decided to step in as well, landing a few of their unguarded islands and taking them over. It wasn't looking good for Guldregel, but they still had some luck left. Money, gear, and armies from Laker had arrived to the fronts around the nation, and Guldregel managed to push back in some places, even getting men into Folket. Guldregel would have some luck for a while, leaving them alive for a little bit longer. Then, another nation joined the war. Ulfsbjerg historically had a claim over some Havratian territory that, after being taken over by Guldregel, was split between Havrit and them. Knowing that Guldregel was busy elsewhere, they declared war on them and swiftly occupied their claim. In doing that, though, they also fought a militia group from Havrit, effectively putting them at war with both Guldregel and Havrit. Ulfsbjerg and Folket had agreed not to fight each other, but tensions grew between them. After a few weeks, the lines generally stalled, and fighting on the Ulfsbjergen front stalled. On the front of the rebellions, though, it was not slow. The lines were generally very unstable and constantly flowing, but in an outcome generally unexpected by the world, all three revolutionary groups were making solid progress and even gaining on Guldregel, winning many battles across the country. Every revolutionary group had managed to achieve access to the seas around the nation, allowing for volunteers and aid to come to the movement, which only empowered them more. The revolution, generally the most supported of the movements around the world, got the most foreign aid, and was even able to branch out to more cities near the capital while still fighting throughout Cairn. Ulfsbjerg, the nation that had already managed to occupy its claim at the expense of both Guldregel and Havrit, wanted to lower the tension between its neighboring powers. The leaders of Havrit and Ulfsbjerg, along with delegates from Guldregel and Folket, sat down in the Ulfsbjergen capital to discuss. It was agreed that forces from all nations in the area would pull out, and Ulfsbjerg would get to annex their claim in exchange for peace and a treaty of friendship with whoever won the rest of the Havratian front. It was at this point, even despite the small victories they had made and the peace with Ulfsbjerg, that the five truly knew Guldregel would fall. Large swaths of the nation had been occupied by all kinds of groups, and there was seemingly no way to win. The five, though, wanted to fight to the true end. The few still loyal Regelian forces and Laker's armies joined together for one last push. They are able to take back a lot of land quickly, but not enough. The forces still alive were tired and simply couldn't go any farther. Laker forces retreated en masse to get back to their country, and just about every man in the Regelian army deserted to one group or another. With the knowledge that the Regelian fall was soon, even more countries joined in hopes of gaining some land from the nation in shambles. Usurpator, a nation previously pressured to not join the invasion by Laker, moved in to occupy some territory, and so did Afkrog, a previously friendly country with Guldregel. After a month more, it was over. Every last bit of Guldregel had been occupied, and the hiding place of the five had been discovered, with the resistance group that found them publicly hanging the tyrants. Delegates from every participating power except the defeated nations came to discuss how the nation would be partitioned. It took weeks for everyone to finally agree on the outcome, but it was done. Laker would face no territorial losses, but it would be forced to pay war reparations to some of the powers in the war. All of the Regelian principalities would be freed with their original territory intact. And it would be given full freedom and some land as a reward, while Havrit would be restored to its original borders minus the agreed-upon Ulfsbjergian claim and Kist, given to Folket, with a formal alliance being signed between Havrit, Folket, and Ulfsbjerg. Vindel was allowed to annex the islands they had occupied during the war, and Usurpator would gain some more territory along the two rivers marking their original border. Afkrog would take a large island off the Regelian coast. Finally, the true partition, the part that was the most debated part of the deal, was agreed on. The revolution, which would formally be recognized as the Republic of Regel, which would be led by Nista until the next election, would gain the most land from it, getting about 2/5 of the territory left. The Socialistique, becoming the Goldian Commune, would get little more than half of what was left after that, and Magdfold, becoming Neithersk, would have the rest. After hundreds of years of oppression from the ancestors of the Five, the nation finally fell. There would certainly be tension between every nation created by the bloody Regelian Civil War, but after a while, with hope, it would simmer down and maybe there would be peace. But that's all in the future, and who knows what could happen. This marks the end of this scenario and of the end of Guldregel. If you enjoyed it or want to see me continue a story in this world, feel free to like the video and comment to tell me your feedback or ideas. This project took a long time and a lot of work, and I'm not good at this YouTube thing, so any feedback is appreciated. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.